My ex-wife's new husband shot my daughter in the chest. Bleeding out, she screamed. She deserved IT for stealing. I tried to call 911. Her general father crushed my phone. You're not calling anyone, he said. I looked at him and smiled. Then he noticed what was in my other hand.
Theron Frank had learned one immutable truth in his 20 years as a crisis management consultant. The moment you stop planning for the worst is the moment it finds you. He stood in his home office, studying the wall he'd spent 2 years building. To anyone else, it would look like obsessive paranoia. Photographs, documents, timeline strings connecting names and places like a detective's conspiracy board. But Theron knew it was something else entirely. Insurance. Dad, you're doing it again. He turned to find Diane leaning against the doorframe, her 15-year-old face caught between amusement and concern. She had his dark eyes, sharp and observant, always seeing more than people expected. Doing what? Theron asked, though he knew the answer. The chess thing, where you stare at something and calculate 30 moves ahead. She walked in, dropping her backpack with practiced carelessness. It's Friday. My weekend with Mom. Theron's jaw tightened imperceptibly. You don't have to go if you don't want to. It's fine. Diane shrugged, but her eyes told a different story. Besides, you taught me to play the long game, remember? He taught her too well. Diane had inherited his strategic mind, his ability to see patterns others missed. It made him proud and terrified in equal measure. Just be careful around Hollis, Theron said quietly. Diane's expression hardened. She despised her mother's new husband, though she was careful never to say so around Bonnie. Always am. After she left, Theron returned to his wall. Hollis Shepard, real estate developer, millionaire, and grade-A predator wearing a $1,000 suit. For 2 years, Theron had been watching him, not out of jealousy over his ex-wife, but because he'd seen something in Hollis's eyes during their first meeting. Violence, barely contained. Theron's background in crisis management had taught him to identify threats. He'd consulted for Fortune 500 companies, helped them navigate hostile takeovers, corporate espionage, and executive security. He understood how dangerous men operated, how they presented polished exteriors while rotting from within. Hollis Shepard was a bomb waiting to detonate. So Theron had done what he did best. He'd prepared. Every document on his wall represented a piece of the puzzle. Land deals that didn't quite add up, families mysteriously selling property below market value, whispers of intimidation and coercion. Nothing concrete enough for prosecution. Not yet. But Theron was patient. He'd learned patience during his divorce, when Bonnie's father, retired Army General Noble Olson, had used his connections and intimidation to tilt custody arrangements. Theron had fought, but ultimately accepted partial custody, knowing that sometimes you had to lose a battle to win the war. His phone buzzed. A message from Diane arrived. Hollis in a mood. Love you. Theron typed back. Stay alert. Remember what we discussed. They'd had many discussions lately. About trusting her instincts. About documenting things that felt wrong. About the emergency protocols they'd established. He glanced at the small device on his desk. A backup recording system, voice-activated, GPS-enabled, with cloud backup that uploaded in real time. He'd given one to Diane 3 months ago, disguised as a fashionable pendant. She thought it was just jewelry. It was so much more. Bonnie Olson Shepard barely recognized the woman in her bathroom mirror. 3 years ago, she'd been married to Theron, a stable, intelligent man who provided security but lacked something. Excitement, maybe. Passion. When she'd met Hollis at a charity gala, she felt alive for the first time in years. His confidence, his wealth, his intensity, it had been intoxicating. Now, studying the faint bruise on her arm that makeup couldn't quite hide, she wondered when intoxication had turned to toxicity. Bonnie. Hollis's voice boomed from downstairs. Is the girl here yet? The girl. He never called Diane by name. She just arrived. Bonnie called back, applying another layer of concealer. Downstairs, Diane stood in the marble foyer of the Shepard mansion, feeling like an intruder in a museum. Everything was expensive, pristine cold. Her mother's taste had once run toward warm colors and comfortable furniture. Now everything was chrome and glass and sharp edges. Hollis emerged from his office, scotch in hand despite it being barely noon. He was 48, handsome in a severe way, with silver threading through his dark hair. His suit probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Diane. He didn't smile. Your mother's upstairs. Try not to disrupt anything this weekend. I'll be invisible, she replied evenly. His eyes narrowed. You're like your father. Always watching, always judging. Must be exhausting. Before she could respond, another car pulled up outside, a black Mercedes with government plates. Her grandfather had arrived. General Noble Olson, retired, carried himself like he still commanded battalions. At 70, he was steel and stone, with white hair cropped military short and eyes that could reduce grown men to stammering recruits. He'd served 3 tours, commanded bases across 2 continents, and collected enough medals to outfit a museum. He was also the most frightening man Diane had ever known. Grandpa, she said carefully. Diane. He gave her the briefest nod before turning to Hollis. We need to talk. The Riverside deal is attracting attention. Hollis's expression soured. Not here. Not now. Yes. Here. Now. The general's voice left no room for argument. They disappeared into Hollis's office, door closing with an ominous click. Diane caught fragments through the heavy wood, pressure, compensation, stubborn residence. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father. Everything okay? She typed back, define okay. What Diane didn't tell him was what she discovered the previous weekend, when she'd been looking for a phone charger in Hollis's home office. The filing cabinet had been unlocked, unusual for a man as paranoid as her stepfather. Inside, she found a folder labeled Riverside Development, Confidential. The documents inside had made her blood run cold. Letters to property owners with barely veiled threats. Photos of homes with damage that looked suspiciously deliberate. Bank records showing payments to people with titles like acquisition specialist and persuasion consultant. And at the bottom, an email exchange between Hollis and her grandfather, discussing how to use the general's military connections to fast-track eminent domain proceedings. They were forcing people out of their homes, destroying livelihoods, all for profit. Diane had photographed everything with her phone, sent the images to a secure cloud account her father had set up for her. She thought about telling him immediately, but decided to gather more evidence first. She learned from Theron that you only got one shot at taking down powerful people. You needed to make it count. What she hadn't planned on was getting caught. That evening, while Bonnie was out with friends and the general had left for some military function, Diane made a mistake. She went back to Hollis's office, hoping to find more evidence to give her father. The kind of evidence that would bury Hollis forever. She didn't hear him come home early. The office door opened as Diane was photographing the contents of a locked drawer she'd managed to jimmy open. Hollis stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the hall light, his presence filling the space like gathering storm clouds. You know, he said quietly, I had a feeling about you. Always so quiet, so watchful. Just like your father. Diane's heart hammered. She carefully placed the documents back, phone clutched in her other hand. I was just looking for her. Don't. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Don't insult me with lies. What did you see? Nothing important. My locked drawer? Nothing important. His voice rose, alcohol and rage mixing into something dangerous. What did you photograph? I don't know what you're. He crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbing her wrist. Give me your phone. Now. Let go of me. Diane tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. Do you have any idea what you've done? Hollis's face was crimson now. Do you know how many people would kill for this information? Your father put you up to this, didn't he? Sent his little spy to destroy me. My dad doesn't know. Liar. He ripped the phone from her hand, hurling it against the wall where it shattered. You're just like him. Thinking you're smarter than everyone else. Thinking you can ruin me. Diane's training kicked in. The self-defense classes Theron had insisted on, the protocols they'd established. She reached for her pendant, pressing the small button hidden in its design. The emergency beacon activated, sending her location and starting a recording directly to her father's devices. That was everything, she said desperately, trying to de-escalate. I'll delete it. I won't tell anyone. Too late. Hollis pulled open a desk drawer. You've seen too much. You'll run to your father, and he'll use this to destroy me, destroy your mother, destroy everything I've built. When he turned back, he was holding a gun. Diane's mind went blank. Hollis, please. You don't understand. The Riverside deal is not just about money. Your grandfather has partners, dangerous people who've invested millions. If this falls apart, his hand shook, whiskey courage warring with reality. They'll kill us. All of us. Then let me help. We can figure this out. There's nothing to figure out. His finger moved to the trigger. You shouldn't have stolen from me. Shouldn't have betrayed your family. You're not my family. The gun fired. The sound was impossibly loud in the enclosed space. Diane felt impact, sharp and burning in her chest, then she was falling. The floor rushed up to meet her, and suddenly she couldn't breathe properly. Warm wetness spread across her shirt. She heard herself screaming, or maybe that was her mother, suddenly in the doorway. Everything was chaos. Bonnie shrieking, Hollis backing away, dropping the gun like it had burned him. She stole from me. Hollis was saying, voice oddly detached. She was stealing classified documents. She deserved. Then hands were on Diane, her mother's, checking the wound, pressing down. Blood between Bonnie's fingers, so much blood. Through fading vision, Diane saw her mother fumbling for her phone. I'm calling an ambulance. I'm calling. The front door crashed open. Theron Franks stood in the foyer, and Diane had never seen that expression on her father's face before. Pure, focused rage, ice cold, and absolutely controlled. He'd received the emergency alert. He'd been 20 minutes away, had broken every traffic law getting here. His hand moved to his pocket, pulling out his phone. 911, I need. A massive hand closed around his wrist. General Noble Olson had arrived, right behind Theron, his Mercedes still running outside. The old soldier assessed the scene instantly, his granddaughter bleeding on the floor, his son-in-law holding a smoking gun, his daughter in hysterics. And he made a choice. You're not calling anyone, the general said, crushing Theron's phone in his fist. Plastic and glass shattered, components scattering across the marble floor. We're handling this internally. Theron looked at him, at this decorated soldier, this man who'd built a career on honor and duty, and felt something inside him click into place. Every contingency plan, Every preparation, every precaution he'd made over 2 years crystallized into perfect clarity. He smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a chess master who'd just watched his opponent make a fatal move. You think I'm afraid of you? The general's voice hardened. You think your word means anything against mine? Against a military hero? I'll bury you, and there's nothing. Theron raised his other hand, and it was a small device, screen glowing. On that screen, multiple indicators blinked, recording active. Upload complete. Live stream. 47 viewers and counting. The general's face went slack. You stupid old fool, Theron said softly, keeping pressure on Diane's wound with one hand while holding the device with the other. Did you really think I wouldn't prepare for this? The general stared at the device. What is that? Insurance. Theron's voice was deadly calm. The pendant I gave Diane? Hidden camera, microphone, GPS beacon, and cellular transmitter. The moment she activated the emergency signal, it started streaming everything to a secure server. Every word, every image. He gestured at the device in his hand. This is just the monitor. The real feed is already backed up in 6 different locations across 3 countries. Law enforcement received notifications 5 minutes ago. So did 3 journalists I have on retainer, a civil rights attorney, and the FBI field office. Hollis made a sound like a dying animal. No, that's not. It gets better. Theron finally looked at his daughter, saw her struggling to breathe, and something cracked in his control facade. But he held together, because that's what she needed. Diane, sweetheart, stay with me. Help is coming. Dad. Her voice was weak. I got the files. I know. You did good. He looked back at the general. You want to know what else I have? 2 years of evidence against your son-in-law. Property fraud, intimidation, bribery, using your military position to influence civilian legal proceedings. Every dirty deal, every threatened family, every illegal payment. The general's hands clenched into fists. You're bluffing. Am I? Want to test that theory? Because my backup plan has backup plans. I've been a crisis management consultant for 20 years. I've advised Fortune 500 CEOs, handled corporate espionage cases, and learned from the best how to protect assets. He smiled again, colder this time. My daughter is my most important asset. Did you really think I'd leave her unprotected around a violent drunk and his criminal father-in-law? Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. You can't. The general's legendary composure was cracking. I'm a decorated officer. I served this country for 40 years. And just threw it all away to protect a man who shot your granddaughter. Theron's voice cut like a blade. Even if you could make the shooting disappear, which you can't, it's all documented. There's no hiding the attempted cover-up. You just assaulted me and destroyed evidence in a felony assault case. On camera, with dozens of witnesses watching the live stream. Bonnie was sobbing now, rocking back and forth, hands still pressed to Diane's wound. Dad, what have you done? What have we done? Shut up, the general snapped, but his authority was bleeding away. We can claim the recording is fake, deep fake technology. With the timestamps, the GPS data, the dozen independent witness accounts already flooding my legal team's inbox. Theron shook his head. You just destroyed your entire legacy in 15 seconds of bad judgment. The sirens were close now, maybe a block away. Hollis suddenly bolted for the back door. Let him run, Theron said calmly. I tagged his car with a GPS tracker 2 months ago. He won't get 5 miles. The general lunged at Theron, decades of military training still sharp. But Theron had expected this too. He'd been studying the old soldier for 2 years, knew his tactics, his reflexes. He sidestepped, letting the general's momentum carry him past, then delivered a precise strike to the back of the knee, something he'd learned for his own self-defense training. The general went down hard, cursing. The front door burst open. Police flooded in, weapons drawn, followed by paramedics with equipment. Professional chaos, everyone knowing their roles. My daughter, Theron said immediately. Gunshot wound to the chest, approximately 7 minutes ago. Shooter fled through the back, driving a silver Mercedes S-Class, license plate. He rattled off the numbers from memory. The paramedics were already working on Diane, establishing an airway, checking vitals. Theron wanted to hold her, scream at them to work faster, but he forced himself to stay rational. Emotion helped no one right now. Sir, I need you to step back, one of the EMTs said gently. I'm going with her. Sir, I'm a qualified first responder with combat medical training from my consulting work. I'm going with my daughter. It was the first lie Theron had told all evening, but the paramedic bought it, too busy saving Diane's life to argue. As they loaded her into the ambulance, Theron caught a glimpse of the general being handcuffed, cops reading him his rights. The old soldier's face was ashen, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. Good. In the ambulance, Diane's eyes fluttered open. Did we get them? We got them, sweetheart. You just focus on staying alive. He squeezed her hand. I need you to stay alive. Knew you'd have a plan. Her voice was thread thin. Always 3 steps. 3 steps ahead, Theron finished, voice breaking for the first time. Always. St. Catherine's Hospital became a war zone within an hour. Theron sat in a private waiting room while surgeons worked on Diane. He'd been pushed out of the ER after initial triage, forced to wait like any other helpless parent. But he wasn't helpless, and he wasn't idle. His real phone, the one the general hadn't seen, was in his hand, coordinating the cascade of dominoes he'd set up over 2 years. First call, his attorney, Kelvin Christian, a shark in an expensive suit who'd been retained specifically for this eventuality. "It's happening," Theron said without preamble. "Christ. Is she in surgery? Prognosis unknown. I need you to execute Protocol Black." A pause. "You're sure? Once we start that, there's no walking it back. They shot my daughter and tried to cover it up. On video. I'm sure. Okay, give me 20 minutes. Second call. Jamar Logan, an investigative journalist who'd won 2 Pulitzers exposing military corruption. Theron had been feeding him breadcrumbs about the Shepard Olson operation for 6 months. "Jamar, it's Frank. The story just broke wide open. I saw the stream. Jesus, Theron, is your daughter fighting for her life. I'm sending you the complete evidence package. Everything. Land fraud, military corruption, witness intimidation, the works. How fast can you publish? If it's as solid as you say, by morning. But the mainstream outlets will want verification. They'll get verification when Hollis Shepard is arrested trying to flee the state. Should be." He checked his other device. About 45 minutes from now. Third call. FBI Special Agent Samantha Martin, who headed the White-Collar Crimes Division. They'd met at a security conference 2 years ago, and Theron had carefully cultivated that professional relationship. "Agent Martin, this is Theron Frank. I believe you received my data package approximately 30 minutes ago. Mr. Frank, I can't discuss ongoing. My 15-year-old daughter was shot by Hollis Shepard tonight because she discovered evidence of his criminal enterprise. I have video of the shooting, video of retired General Noble Olson attempting to obstruct justice, and a comprehensive evidence package documenting 2 years of property fraud involving military resources." Silence on the line. "I know you've been investigating contract irregularities at Fort Hays," Theron continued. "I know your investigation kept hitting walls because someone with military authority was blocking you. That someone was General Noble Olson. He was using his connections to fast-track eminent domain seizures for his son-in-law's real estate deals. I have proof. Names, dates, communications, bank records. If what you're saying is true." Agent Martin's voice was carefully neutral. "You'll need to come in for an official statement. I'll be there as soon as my daughter is out of surgery. In the meantime, I suggest you have units ready at the state borders. Hollis Shepard is running, and he knows where the bodies are buried, literally, in 2 cases." He hung up before she could respond. Fourth call. Carol Hendricks, a victims' rights advocate who'd been documenting cases of displaced families in the Riverside area. "Carol, it's time. Release everything. You're sure? Once we go public with the victims. They shot my daughter to protect their secrets. I'm sure." By the time the surgeon emerged 3 hours later, the cascade was in full effect. "Mr. Frank," the surgeon was young, competent-looking, exhausted. "Your daughter is stable. The bullet missed her heart by centimeters, collapsed her lung, but we were able to repair the damage. She's going to make it." Theron felt his knees nearly buckle with relief. "When can I see her?" "Recovery room, about an hour. She'll be sedated, but you can sit with her." The moment the surgeon left, Theron's phone exploded with notifications. Jamar Logan's story had just gone live. Decorated general and developer's son-in-law caught in property fraud scheme. Attempted murder cover-up fails. Below that, breaking, Hollis Shepard arrested at state border attempting to flee. And then, FBI confirms investigation into military corruption involving General Noble Olson. By midnight, it was trending on every major news platform. By 3 a.m., 6 other victims of the Shepard Olson operation had come forward with their stories. By dawn, both Hollis and the general were in federal custody, denied bail. Theron sat beside Diane's bed in the recovery room, holding her hand, watching her breathe. The machines beeped steadily, monitoring her vitals, confirming she was alive. His phone buzzed again. A text from Kelvin Christian. "The DA wants to offer Bonnie a deal. She's ready to testify against both of them." Of course she was. Bonnie had always been a survivor first, loyal second. With her father and husband facing decades in prison, she'd flipped to save herself. Another text, this one from Agent Martin. "You should know, we found evidence of worse crimes. Bodies at the Riverside site. Hollis is talking. This goes deeper than property fraud." Theron stared at that message for a long moment. He'd known Hollis was dangerous, but murder? How many people had died to protect those profit margins? "Dad," he looked up. Diane's eyes were barely open, clouded with painkillers, but aware. "Hey, sweetheart, you're okay. You're safe. Did we win?" Theron thought about Hollis in custody, facing murder charges. About the general's legacy destroyed, his freedom gone. About Bonnie losing everything. About the victims finally getting justice. "Yeah," he said softly. "We won." Diane's lips quirked into a weak smile. "Told you. I learned from the best." She drifted back to sleep, and Theron held her hand tighter. He'd won. But as he sat there in the sterile hospital room, watching his daughter fight through the aftermath of a bullet wound, he wondered if victory had been worth nearly losing her. Then he remembered the video of Hollis pulling the trigger, the general crushing his phone, both of them willing to let a 15-year-old die to protect their secrets. No, this wasn't about whether it was worth it. This was about making sure people like them never hurt anyone again. 3 days later, Theron sat in FBI headquarters, going through his evidence with Agent Martin and her team. Diane was still hospitalized, but recovering faster than expected. She'd asked her father to finish the job while she healed, so he was finishing it. "This is extensive," Agent Martin said, paging through the documentation. "You've been building this case for 2 years. 26 months, Theron corrected. "From the moment I met Hollis Shepard and recognized what he was." "And you knew he was dangerous enough to hurt your daughter?" "I knew he was dangerous. I didn't think he was stupid enough to actually pull the trigger." Theron's voice was flat. "That was my miscalculation. I thought he'd threaten, intimidate, maybe even strike her. But I had protocols for all of that. I just didn't expect." He trailed off. Even now, thinking about how close he'd come to losing Diane made his chest tight. "The pendant camera was brilliant," another agent said. "We've never seen this kind of preemptive evidence gathering in a domestic situation." "I don't do anything halfway," Theron replied. "When I identified Hollis as a threat, I treated it like I would any corporate security risk. Multiple redundancies, constant surveillance, documented pattern." Agent Martin leaned forward. "Mr. Frank, you understand how this looks, right? You essentially manufactured a situation where your daughter would be in danger to catch these men. Is that what you think?" Theron's eyes were cold. "I protected my daughter with every tool at my disposal. I gave her emergency beacons, taught her self-defense, monitored her location, and had a rapid response plan. The only reason she survived is because of my preparation. Don't you dare suggest I put her at risk. But you knew Hollis might snap. I knew he was a violent criminal. That's why I documented everything. That's why I had contingencies." Theron stood, anger finally breaking through his control. "You know what the alternative was? Waiting for him to hurt someone, my daughter or some other victim, and then hoping the justice system would work. Hoping he'd be held accountable. How often does that work out?" "Agent Martin?" She was quiet. "I spent 2 years gathering evidence that would have put him away," Theron continued. "But he moved first. And when he did, I was ready. Maybe that makes me paranoid. Maybe it makes me a bad father. But my daughter is alive, and Hollis Shepard is going to prison for the rest of his life. I'll take that trade." Agent Martin nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I think you saved more lives than just your daughter's. We've positively identified 3 bodies at the Riverside development site. All of them property owners who refused to sell." Theron felt sick. 3. "That we've found. There might be more." She pulled out a file. "Hollis is cooperating now, trying to blame everything on your ex-wife's father. Says the general was the one who ordered the killings, that he was just following instructions." "That's probably partially true," Theron said. "Noble Olson was career military. He thought in terms of objectives and acceptable casualties. Hollis was the executioner, but the general was the strategist. And Bonnie took the deal, I heard. What's she getting?" "Prosecution is recommending 5 years with possibility of parole in 3. She claims she didn't know about the murders, only the property fraud. And she's provided additional evidence against both men." Theron snorted. "Of course she did. Bonnie's always been good at survival." That evening, Theron visited Diane in the hospital. She was sitting up now, color returning to her face, though she still moved carefully. "Hey, Dad, how'd it go with the FBI?" "They're building a case that could put Hollis away for multiple life sentences. The general, too." "Good." Diane's voice was hard. "He shot me and didn't even care. Just worried about his stupid deal." "I know." Theron sat beside her bed. "I'm sorry I didn't protect you better." "Are you kidding? You protected me perfectly. I'm alive because of all the stuff you set up." She paused. "When did you start suspecting Hollis was that dangerous?" "The first time I met him. Something in his eyes. I've seen that look before in corporate executives who do anything for profit. Predators in suits." Theron pulled out his phone, showing her a photo. "This is from our first meeting, the day your mom introduced him. See his body language? Possessive hand on her shoulder, stiff posture when looking at me, forced smile that doesn't reach his eyes. Classic indicators of someone who views relationships as ownership." Diane studied the photo. "So you've been planning this whole thing since then?" "Not this exactly. I was planning to gather enough evidence to have him arrested before he could hurt anyone. I wanted him in prison for fraud, not attempted murder." Theron's voice roughened. "You were never supposed to get shot. But I found the extra evidence," Diane said. "The stuff about Grandpa using his military connections. That wasn't part of your plan." "No, you did that on your own." He smiled slightly. "You're a better investigator than I realized. Learn from the best." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "Dad," Diane said eventually, "why does Mom always choose the wrong people?" Theron considered the question carefully. "Your mother wants excitement, passion, intensity. She mistakes danger for strength, control for confidence. And men like Hollis, they're good at presenting exactly what someone wants to see. By the time a mask comes off, it's too late." "Do you think she knew about the murders?" "No. Bonnie has many flaws, but she's not evil. She's willfully blind. She chooses not to see things that are inconvenient. But I don't think she knew people were dying." He paused. "She probably suspected Hollis was bending the law, but she told herself it was just business. That's how people like her sleep at night. Rationalization. She's still going to prison." "Yes. For a much shorter time than she deserves, but yes." Diane nodded, processing this. "I don't forgive her for choosing him over us, for letting it get this far. I don't forgive that." "You don't have to," Theron said gently. "You're allowed to be angry with your mother." "Are you angry?" "I was. Now I'm just tired. He squeezed her hand. But we're through the worst of it. The rest is just watching them fall. 6 months later, Theron stood outside federal court, watching news vans assemble for the biggest trial the state had seen in years. United States versus Hollis Shepard and Noble Olson had captivated the nation. A decorated general and his wealthy son-in-law, accused of conspiracy to commit murder, property fraud, witness intimidation, obstruction of justice, and abuse of military authority. The prosecution had 47 witnesses, thousands of pages of documentation, and video evidence that had been played on every news channel in America. Diane was back in school now, though she still had physical therapy twice a week. The bullet wound had healed, but the scar remained, a permanent reminder etched into her chest, just left of her heart. Mr. Frank. He turned to see Kelvin Christian approaching, briefcase in hand. Counselor, ready for this? I've been ready for 6 months. They entered the courthouse together. The gallery was packed, journalists, curious onlookers, families of Hollis's other victims. Carol Hendricks had organized them, given them a voice, helped them find attorneys to file civil suits that would strip whatever assets remained. Hollis looked diminished in his prison jumpsuit, the arrogance gone, replaced by the hollow-eyed desperation of a man who knew his life was over. His expensive lawyers had tried every tactic, claiming the video was manipulated, attacking the evidence chain of custody, attempting to portray Hollis as a victim of circumstance. All had failed. The general sat straighter, still carrying himself like a soldier, but the medals were gone. So was the respect. He'd been stripped of his rank in a military tribunal before the civilian trial even began. 40 years of service erased. Bonnie was already in minimum security, serving her 3-year sentence after taking the prosecution's deal. She testified against both men, providing the final pieces that sealed the case. Theron hadn't seen her since that night in the hospital. Didn't want to. The prosecution's case was methodical, devastating. They presented evidence of 3 murders, property owners who'd refused to sell, their deaths made to look like accidents. They showed financial records linking Hollis to the killings, showed communications between him and the general planning the Riverside development, showed how military resources were illegally deployed to facilitate civilian real estate fraud. And they showed the video. The courtroom fell silent as Diane's pendant camera footage played on a large screen. Every word, every moment, from Hollis discovering her with the documents to the gun firing to the general's attempted cover-up. Theron watched the jury's faces. Shock, disgust, anger. When Diane testified, walking to the stand with visible stiffness, her scar hidden under her blouse, the courtroom was riveted. She spoke clearly, calmly, describing exactly what she'd found and why she'd documented it. My father taught me that when you see something wrong, you have a responsibility to speak up, she said. He taught me to gather evidence, to be thorough, to make sure the truth came out. So when I found proof that Mr. Shepard was hurting people, I did what my dad would do. I documented everything. And you didn't tell your father about your second visit to the office? The prosecutor asked. No, I wanted to get more evidence first to make the case stronger. Her voice wavered slightly. I didn't think Hollis would shoot me. I thought he'd just yell, maybe threaten me like he threatened those families. I didn't think he'd actually pull the trigger. What went through your mind when you saw the gun? That I'd made a mistake. That I should have told my dad what I was planning. Diane looked directly at Hollis. And that my father was right about him. He was a monster in a nice suit. The defense attorney tried to break her testimony, suggest she'd been coached, imply she'd stolen documents with criminal intent. I'm 15 years old, Diane said evenly. I can't commit industrial espionage. I was protecting people from a criminal who used his money and power to hurt them. Just because he's rich doesn't mean he's above the law. The defense had no response to that. When Theron testified, he walked through his entire investigation. How he'd identified Hollis as a threat, how he'd systematically gathered evidence, how he'd prepared contingencies to protect his daughter. Mr. Frank, the defense attorney said, isn't it true that you've been obsessed with destroying my client for years? That you couldn't accept your ex-wife moving on? Theron met his eyes coldly. Your client shot my 15-year-old daughter and then tried to let her bleed out to protect his real estate deals. My personal feelings are irrelevant. The evidence speaks for itself. But you orchestrated this entire situation. I documented your client's crimes and protected my daughter. If he hadn't been a criminal, there'd be nothing to document. If he hadn't been violent, my daughter wouldn't need protection. Don't blame me for his choices. The trial lasted 4 weeks. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Hollis Shepard, 3 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole. General Noble Olson, 45 years federal prison. The sentencing made national headlines. A general brought down by greed and ego. A wealthy developer revealed as a murderer. Justice for once seemingly served. But Theron knew the real work was just beginning. He launched the Riverside Recovery Initiative with the settlement money from civil suits against the Shepard estate. The organization helped displaced families reclaim their properties, provided legal assistance, and offered compensation for those who'd lost loved ones. Carol Hendricks ran the day-to-day operations. Jamar Logan wrote follow-up articles tracking the family's recoveries. Agent Martin had been promoted for her work on the case and now consulted on the initiative, helping identify other potential fraud schemes in the area. 3 months after the sentencing, Theron stood at the Riverside development site. The construction had been halted, the land returned to its original owners. Where Hollis had envisioned luxury condos, families were rebuilding their homes. Mr. Frank, he turned to see an elderly man, probably in his 70s, with weathered hands and kind eyes. I'm Brian Ayala. My house was one of the ones they tried to take. The man extended his hand. I just wanted to thank you. Because of you and your daughter, I still have my home. The home my wife and I built 40 years ago. Theron shook his hand. I'm just glad we could help. It was more than help. They killed my neighbor, Tobias, or lived next door for 25 years. He refused to sell, so they burned his house down with him inside. Made it look like an electrical fire. Brian's voice shook. I would have been next if you hadn't stopped them. How many others? Theron wondered. How many lives have been saved because he'd been paranoid enough to investigate, thorough enough to document everything? Your daughter's very brave, Brian continued. What she did, gathering that evidence, she saved a lot of people. She did, Theron agreed quietly. She really did. That evening, he and Diane had dinner at their favorite restaurant. The first time she'd felt well enough for a normal outing since the shooting. The Riverside families are moving back, Theron said. The initiative is working. Good. Diane poked at her pasta. Have you talked to Mom? No. Have you? She writes letters. I don't read them. You don't have to. I know. Diane set down her fork. Do you think she's actually sorry? Or just sorry she got caught? Theron considered this. Honestly, I think she's sorry her life imploded. Whether she's sorry for what she enabled, for the people who got hurt, I don't know. Your mother's always been good at believing her own narratives. That's a diplomatic way of saying she's delusional. He couldn't help but smile. You've been working on your vocabulary. Well, I've had a lot of time to read in physical therapy. She paused. Do you regret it? Any of it? Regret gathering the evidence? No. Regret that you got hurt? Every single day. Theron's voice was rough. If I could go back, I'd have installed better security, found a way to keep you away from Hollis entirely. But I can't change what happened. All I can do is make sure it meant something. It did mean something. 3 murderers are in prison. Families got justice. People get to keep their homes. Diane reached across the table, squeezing his hand. You did good, Dad. We did good. You almost died, but I didn't. And now, every time I look at this scar, I'll remember that we took down the bad guys. That we won. She smiled, fierce and proud. That's not nothing. Theron looked at his daughter, 15 years old and already braver than most adults he knew, and felt something shift inside him. He'd spent 2 years preparing for the worst, planning for disaster, building contingencies upon contingencies. Maybe it was time to stop waiting for the next crisis and just live. You know what? He said. You're right. We did good. They finished dinner talking about normal things, school, friends, her college plans. For the first time in years, Theron didn't spend the meal calculating risks or building contingency plans. He just enjoyed being with his daughter. 1 year after the shooting, Theron received an unexpected visitor. General Noble Olson, looking a decade older than his 71 years, sat across from him in the prison visiting room. The orange jumpsuit was a far cry from his decorated uniform. His hands shook slightly, maybe age, maybe medication, maybe just the weight of everything he'd lost. You came, that the general said, surprise evident. You asked to see me. I was curious why. I wanted. The old soldier struggled for words. I wanted to understand how you did it, how you destroyed us so completely. Theron leaned back, studying the man who'd once tried to crush his phone, his hopes, his daughter's life. You want to know the secret? Yes. I thought 3 steps ahead. Always. Theron's voice was quiet but firm. The first time I met Hollis, I saw what he was. So I started building the case. Evidence, documentation, contingencies. When Diane was born, I set up trust funds he couldn't touch, legal protections in case anything happened to me, emergency protocols. But you couldn't have known. I knew enough. I knew he was dangerous. I knew you protect him. You always protected Bonnie, always use your power to get what you wanted. So I prepared for the worst-case scenario. Theron leaned forward. The pendant camera was just one tool. I had 6 other recording devices in that house. I had GPS trackers on both your cars. I had access to Hollis's financial records through legal information requests. I built a network of journalists, attorneys, and federal agents who were all waiting for the moment he slipped up. The general's face was ashen. 2 years of preparation. 26 months, Theron corrected. And you handed me victory in 15 seconds when you crushed that phone. If you just let me call 911, if you'd let the system work, Hollis might have gotten away with it. Claimed it was an accident, hired expensive lawyers, used your connections. But you tried to cover it up. You tried to protect a murderer. And that's what destroyed you both. I was protecting my family. You were protecting a monster. There's a difference. Theron stood to leave. Diane's doing well, by the way. Honor roll, varsity debate team, already looking at colleges. She's going to be something special. I'm her grandfather. You're nothing to her. You chose Hollis over her life. That choice has consequences. The general looked at him with something like desperation. If I could go back. But you can't. None of us can. Theron turned to walk away, then paused. You know what the worst part is? I tried to warn Bonnie about Hollis. 3 times in the first year of their relationship. I told her he was dangerous, showed her the evidence I was gathering. She chose not to believe me. Chose to believe you instead, because you told her I was just a jealous ex-husband. I thought you were. I was protecting my daughter. That's what parents do. They think ahead. They prepare. They sacrifice. Theron met the general's eyes one last time. You were a decorated soldier. You commanded thousands of men. You should have understood that. But you chose wealth and power over honor. And now you'll spend the rest of your life in here, thinking about that choice. He left without looking back. That evening, Theron sat in his office, the wall of evidence long since dismantled, and opened his laptop. Diane was upstairs doing homework, music playing softly from her room. Normal teenage sounds, normal teenage life. An email notification popped up. Riverside Recovery Initiative, Year 1 report. He opened it. 43 families had reclaimed their properties. 7 new homes built to replace those destroyed. A community center established. A memorial garden for Tobias, Orr, and the other victims. Good. That was good. His phone buzzed. A text from Diane. Dad, can we get pizza? I'm tired of leftovers. He smiled and typed back. Sure. The usual. Obviously. Extra cheese. You got it. Theron stood, closed his laptop, and headed upstairs. At the door to Diane's room, he paused. She was bent over her desk, earbuds in, completely focused on her schoolwork. The scar was hidden under her shirt, but he knew it was there. Would always be there. But she was alive. Safe. Happy. That was what mattered. She looked up, caught him watching, and pulled out one earbud. What? Nothing. Just glad you're here. She rolled her eyes, but smiled. You're being weird again. I'm allowed to be weird. I'm your dad. Fair point. She turned back to her homework. Hey, did you ever figure out what you're going to do with all the money from the book deal? The book. A publisher had offered him 7 figures for his story, how a regular father had taken down a general and a millionaire through patience and preparation. He'd been hesitant to accept, didn't want to profit from Diane's trauma. But she convinced him. Dad, other people need to know this stuff. How to protect themselves. How to gather evidence. How to fight back against powerful people. Write the book. So he was writing it. I think I'm going to donate most of it to the Recovery Initiative, Theron said, and set up a scholarship fund for families affected by property fraud. Diane nodded approvingly. That's good. Very noble and hero-like. I'm not a hero. Sure you are. You saved my life and took down the bad guys. That's pretty much the definition of hero. Heroes don't spend 2 years plotting revenge. Heroes do whatever it takes to protect their families. She looked at him seriously, suddenly seeming much older than 16. You did what you had to do, and you did it smart. That's the best kind of hero. Later, after pizza and homework and their nightly routine, Theron stood in his office one more time. Where the evidence wall had been, there was now a photo of Diane at her debate team victory, holding a trophy, grinning at the camera. Alive, safe, happy. He'd spent 2 years thinking 3 steps ahead, preparing for disaster, building contingencies. And in the end, all of it had been necessary. All of it had mattered. Hollis Shepard was in prison. General Noble Olson was in prison. Bonnie was in prison. The victims had justice. The families had their homes. And Theron had his daughter. That was the only victory that mattered. He turned off the light and headed upstairs, thinking not about the past, or the revenge, or the battle, but about tomorrow. About helping Diane with her college applications. About the Recovery Initiative's next project. About living life without constantly preparing for disaster. Maybe it was time to think 1 step ahead instead of 3. Maybe it was time to just be a father rather than a strategist. Or maybe, and this made him smile as he climbed the stairs, maybe he could be both. After all, old habits die hard. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Theron Frank was always thinking 3 steps ahead. Just in case.